Have you ever walked into a room and felt like something was off, even though no one said a word? Maybe the way someone glanced at you carried more weight than the words they later spoke. Or maybe in a meeting, one person stayed completely silent, yet somehow seemed to hold more influence than those who were talking the loudest. Most of us live surrounded by hidden signals, subtle cues, unspoken messages, the quiet movements in the social arena that we rarely notice. And because we don't notice them, we miss the truth that lies beneath the surface. The Stoics, those ancient thinkers from over 2,000 years ago, understood something that modern psychology still confirms today. True power is not about noise, force, or domination. It's not about raising your voice, trying to prove yourself, or pushing others into submission. Real power comes from something quieter, sharper, and far more enduring. Awareness, calm precision, and silence. Think about it. The loudest person in the room usually isn't the strongest. More often than not, the loudest person is the most insecure. They want attention. They want validation. But the one who holds back, who listens more than they speak, who chooses words like arrows instead of spraying them carelessly, that's the person others watch closely. That's the person who can move the room without even raising their tone. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote in his Meditations, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What he meant was this: when people are careless, loud, manipulative, or deceptive, the worst thing you can do is mirror their energy. The highest strength is in remaining grounded, calm, and in control of yourself, while others exhaust themselves in noise. Now, why does this matter to you? Because in today's world, whether at work, in relationships, or in your daily interactions, power has shifted. It's no longer about brute strength, and it's not even about holding titles. It's about influence. And influence is built on perception. How people perceive your awareness, your calmness, and your ability to act with precision when others are distracted. That's where real control lies. Let me ask you, how many times have you regretted reacting too quickly, speaking too soon, or letting emotions lead the way? Maybe someone insulted you, and instead of staying composed, you fired back, only to feel empty afterward. Or maybe in a disagreement, you spoke more than you listened, and it cost you respect. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a weapon in your hands. Because if you can train yourself to see what others don't see, if you can remain calm while others are shaking, and if you can use silence as a tool instead of a weakness, you can outsmart almost anyone without raising your voice, without forcing your way, without even showing your full hand. In this video, we're going to uncover 4 powerful Stoic-based practices that will show you exactly how to do this. 4 ways to step into a room and command respect without demanding it. 4 ways to win influence, protect your peace, and move strategically in life, not with noise, but with clarity. Before we dive in, let me give you an image that captures the essence of what we're talking about. Imagine 2 warriors before battle. One is shouting, waving his sword, trying to intimidate the other with volume and chaos. The other stands still, eyes sharp, body steady, breathing slow. Which one do you think the enemy truly fears? It's always the one who doesn't need to shout, because his silence carries a weight that words cannot. His awareness signals that nothing will surprise him. His calmness shows he cannot be provoked into foolish mistakes. That is the heart of Stoic power. And this isn't just philosophy, it's deeply practical. In the modern world, whether you're in a high-stakes business negotiation, dealing with family conflicts, or navigating social politics. The person who sees the hidden cues, who waits instead of rushes, who responds instead of reacts, always wins in the long run. But here's the catch. Most people don't train this skill. Most people stumble through life distracted, scrolling, reacting, talking endlessly, without ever learning the art of awareness, calm, precision, and silence. That's why so many feel powerless, manipulated, or easily provoked. They haven't yet discovered that the quiet mind is the sharpest weapon. So here's what we're going to do. Over the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 4 Stoic-based practices. These are not abstract theories. They are strategies you can apply immediately in your conversations, your relationships, and your decisions. And if you put them into practice, you'll notice something remarkable. People will start reacting differently to you. They'll sense your presence. They'll respect your silence. They'll wonder why they can't shake your calm, even when they try to provoke you. The truth is, power doesn't belong to those who shout the loudest. It belongs to those who see clearly, who act wisely, and who refuse to be slaves to impulse. That is the timeless lesson of the Stoics. And by the end of this journey, you'll know how to wield that power, not to dominate others, but to master yourself. And by doing so, naturally shift the dynamics around you. So stay with me, because what you're about to discover might just change the way you move through the world forever. Part 1. Detach from emotion. See with clarity. Let me ask you something. How often do you regret what you said or did in the heat of the moment? Maybe you snapped back at someone, maybe you raised your voice, maybe you walked away angry. And then, hours later, when your emotions cooled, you looked back and thought, why did I let myself get pulled into that? You see, most people don't see the world as it really is. They see the world through the lens of their emotions. And emotions, when left unchecked, distort reality. Fear creates enemies that don't exist. Pride invents insults that were never intended. Anger convinces you that betrayal is everywhere, even when it's not. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that if you want to live wisely, if you want to see clearly, if you want to act with true power, you have to detach from raw emotion before you respond. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you're at a family dinner. The food is on the table, the atmosphere is warm, and then out of nowhere, someone makes a cutting remark at your expense. Maybe it's about your career. Maybe it's about your choices in life. Maybe it's a personal jab that stings more than it should. Now here's the question. What do you do? For most of us, the instinct is instant reaction. We fire back with a sharp comment. Or maybe we raise our voice. Maybe we sulk and shut down. But in every one of those cases, what happens? We lose control. The insult wasn't the trap. The reaction was. The moment we let our emotions dictate our response, we hand over our power. But picture another version of you. Same dinner, same insult. But instead of reacting, you pause. You take a breath. You observe the situation instead of plunging headfirst into it. And suddenly, you see it clearly. Maybe the person who insulted you was projecting their own insecurity. Maybe they were trying to provoke you to make themselves feel stronger. Or maybe it was nothing more than careless words, not worth the energy of your anger. This is the power of detachment. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you become cold, robotic, or numb. No, it means you create space between the stimulus and your response. You give yourself room to see, not with the eyes of emotion, but with the eyes of clarity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Think about that. The insult, the betrayal, the disappointment. These things don't hold power over you. What gives them power is your interpretation, your emotional coloring, and that is something you can choose. But let's be honest, this is not easy. We live in a world that constantly rewards emotional reactions. Social media thrives on outrage. News outlets fuel themselves with fear. Even in personal conversations, the person who reacts the loudest often gets the most attention. And yet, attention is not the same as power. The truth is, emotional reactivity is weakness dressed up as strength. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can take offense. Anyone can explode in anger. That's easy. What's rare, what's truly powerful, is the person who feels the emotion but doesn't let it control their next move. Think of a skilled chess player. They don't make decisions based on how much they like or dislike their opponent. They don't slam the pieces down in anger. They study the board. They detach. They wait. Every move is made with precision, not emotion. That's why they win. Now, let's bring this back to your life. What would happen if you began practicing this kind of detachment? What if, in your next conflict, you gave yourself 10 seconds before speaking? What if you trained yourself to observe your own emotions, the other person's body language, the true dynamics beneath the surface, before deciding how to respond? I'll tell you what would happen. You'd start to see the hidden game everyone else misses. You'd notice the insecurity behind someone's anger. You'd spot the weakness behind someone's arrogance. You'd recognize manipulation before it hooked you. And most importantly, you'd keep your power. Seneca, another great Stoic, once said, "He who is angry at the things which he cannot help is foolish. He who is angry at the things he can help is still more foolish." In other words, whether you can change the situation or not, anger doesn't help. What helps is clarity. And clarity only comes when you detach from the storm of emotion. Now let's pause for a moment, because I want you to reflect on this in your own life. Where has emotion clouded your judgment before? Was it in an argument with your spouse or partner? Was it at work, when a colleague seemed to challenge your ideas? Was it in traffic, when a stranger cut you off and you let that one moment of irritation ruin an entire day? We all have these moments, and we all have the chance to do better next time. So here's the Stoic practice I want you to carry with you. Observe first, respond later. When something provokes you, don't rush to act. Step back, breathe, ask yourself, what is really happening here? What am I adding to this situation through my emotions? And what would this look like if I stripped away the fear, the pride, or the anger? This is what I call the pause of power. It's simple, but it changes everything. Because when you pause, you're no longer a puppet pulled by emotion. You're the one holding the strings. And here's the beautiful irony. When you detach, when you stay calm, people around you feel it. They sense it. They may not be able to explain it, but they see that you are not easily shaken, and that makes them respect you more. The loud ones, the impulsive ones, the ones who thrive on chaos. They don't know what to do with someone they can't provoke. That is how you win without fighting. That is how you carry power without force. So let me leave you with this thought. Emotions are natural. They rise and fall like waves. But you are not the wave. You are the one who decides whether to surf it or drown beneath it. Detachment isn't about rejecting your humanity. It's about reclaiming your freedom. The world is full of people enslaved by their emotions. Be the exception. Be the one who sees clearly, who acts wisely, and who remains unshaken when others fall apart. That is the essence of Stoic clarity. And when you learn to detach from emotion, you unlock the first step in outsmarting anyone. You can see reality as it truly is, not as your anger, fear, or pride wants you to believe, because only when the waters of the mind are calm can they reflect the truth. Part 2. Observe yourself like a stranger. One of the hardest truths to swallow is this: we are not as objective about ourselves as we like to believe. In fact, we are masters of self-deception. We imagine ourselves kinder than we really are. We convince ourselves we're smarter than we appear. We assume we're funnier, more confident, more disciplined than others actually see. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Other people don't see the version of ourselves that we imagine. They see the raw, unfiltered truth. They see the arrogance that hides behind what we think is confidence. They hear the sharpness in our tone that we thought sounded witty. They notice the impatience we excuse as efficiency. And this is why one of the most powerful Stoic practices you can adopt is this: observe yourself like a stranger. Think about it. Imagine for a moment that you could step outside of your own body and watch yourself move through the world. Imagine hearing your own words from the perspective of someone who doesn't know you. Imagine watching your gestures, your tone, your facial expressions, as though you were a stranger sitting across the table. What would you see? What would you notice? For many of us, this kind of self-observation is deeply uncomfortable. It's like hearing your voice on a recording for the first time. You cringe. You want to turn it off. You tell yourself, that can't be how I really sound. But the truth is, that is exactly how you sound. That is exactly how others hear you. And the discomfort you feel in that moment is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of truth. The Stoics believe that discomfort is often the doorway to growth. If something stings when you see it in yourself, it means you've touched upon something real, something that needs your attention. Ignoring it keeps you blind. Facing it builds self-mastery. Let me give you a simple but powerful example. Let's say you've always thought of yourself as confident. You walk into rooms with your head held high. You speak boldly. You make decisions quickly. To you, this feels like strength. But when you step back and observe yourself through the eyes of others, you might notice something you never considered, that what feels like confidence to you feels like arrogance to them, that your boldness sometimes shuts down conversation, that your decisiveness sometimes looks like stubbornness. Now, here's the critical question. Would you rather keep believing the story in your head, or would you rather face the uncomfortable truth and grow? The Stoics would say, face the truth always, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts, because the person who can see themselves clearly, without illusions, becomes unshakable. Take Steve Jobs, for example. Love him or hate him, no one can deny his effectiveness. One of the reasons he became so powerful was because he practiced relentless self-observation. He would review, refine, and tear apart his own ideas before anyone else had the chance. He was brutally honest with himself about what was good and what was mediocre. And that honesty, painful though it was, made him sharper, more precise, more effective. Now, I'm not saying you need to become Steve Jobs, but I am saying this. If you want to build credibility, if you want to earn trust, if you want to master yourself, you have to stop living in the illusion of who you think you are and start facing who you really are. And here's the beautiful part. When you do this, when you look at yourself with the eyes of a stranger, you don't just see flaws. You see opportunities. You see where you've been selling yourself short. You see talents you didn't realize you had. You see strengths you can lean on more. Self-observation isn't just about cutting yourself down. It's about building yourself up on a foundation of truth instead of fantasy. So how do you practice this? Let me give you some practical steps straight from Stoic wisdom. First, pause and reflect after interactions. After a meeting, ask yourself, if I were watching myself from the outside, what would I have seen? Did I really listen? Or did I just wait for my turn to speak? Did my tone build trust? Or did it create tension? Second, use tools. Today we have what the Stoics never had: recordings. Record yourself speaking. Watch yourself on video. Yes, it will feel uncomfortable. Yes, you'll want to shut it off. But stay with it. That discomfort is gold. It's showing you the gap between how you think you come across and how you actually come across. Third, invite honest feedback. Ask someone you trust. How did I come across in that situation? What did you notice that I might not be seeing? And when they answer, resist the urge to defend yourself. Just listen. Remember, the Stoic doesn't seek comfort. The Stoic seeks truth. But here's the warning. Don't expect this to feel good. Self-observation is not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to sting. It's supposed to humble you. Because only when the ego is cracked open does growth have space to enter. Epictetus, another great Stoic, once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that is the heart of this practice. If you keep believing the polished image you've created of yourself, you'll never grow beyond it. But the moment you see yourself clearly, as a stranger would, you unlock the possibility of real transformation. So, I want you to reflect on this. What if the version of yourself you've been selling to the world isn't the version people are actually buying? What if the way you see yourself is 10 steps removed from the way others experience you? Wouldn't you want to know? The answer, if you're serious about growth, has to be yes. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is to live your whole life blind to your own blind spots. To walk around thinking you're inspiring, when really you're overbearing. To believe you're funny, when really you're cruel. To think you're respected, when really you're merely tolerated. That is the tragedy of self-deception. But the gift of brutal honesty with yourself, the gift of observing yourself like a stranger, is that it builds something priceless: credibility. When people see that you're willing to face your own flaws, they trust you more. When they see that you're not lost in illusion, they respect you more. And when you trust yourself enough to face the truth, you no longer need to fear criticism, because you've already faced it head-on. That is real strength. That is real mastery. So here's the Stoic challenge I want you to take on. This week, observe yourself. Watch your words. Notice your habits. Listen to your tone. See yourself not through the flattering lens of your ego, but through the unflinching eyes of a stranger. It will be uncomfortable. It will sting. But in that sting lies freedom. Because every blind spot you uncover is one less chain holding you back. Remember this: self-deception may feel comfortable, but it keeps you stuck. Brutal honesty may feel painful, but it sets you free. The Stoics knew that power doesn't begin with conquering others. It begins with conquering yourself. And the only way to do that is to see yourself as you truly are, not as you wish to be. So stop hiding from your own reflection. Look directly at it, learn from it, and become the kind of person whose strength is not imagined, but real. That is the path to credibility. That is the path to trust. That is the path to self-mastery. Part 3. Master the pause. Power of silence. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence makes most people? In a conversation, if there's even a few seconds of quiet, many rush to fill it, talking faster, blurting out things they didn't mean, or over-explaining themselves. Why? Because silence unsettles. Silence exposes. Silence has power. The Stoics knew this. They understood that silence isn't emptiness, it's strategy. While others rush to speak, the wise pause. While others fear the quiet, the wise use it as a weapon of clarity. Think about it. Why do so many people overtalk? At the root of it, it's fear. Fear of not being heard. Fear of losing control. Fear of appearing weak. But ironically, the more someone rambles, the more weakness they reveal. Every unnecessary word is like a crack in the armor, showing insecurity. But silence is different. Silence creates weight. Silence makes people lean in. Silence allows you to observe not only what's being said, but what's not being said. And that is where truth often hides. Let me give you a historical example. Abraham Lincoln, one of the most respected presidents in American history, was known for his long pauses during conversations and negotiations. He would sit silently, letting others talk, sometimes until they grew uncomfortable. And in that silence, something magical happened. People revealed more than they intended. They showed their motives, their fears, their weaknesses. Lincoln didn't need to pressure them. He let silence do the work. Fast forward to modern times. Think about Barack Obama's speeches. Love him or not, one thing most agree on is that he had a presence. He didn't rush his words. He used pauses deliberately. He let his sentences breathe. And in those pauses, people felt his authority. They felt calm. They felt the weight of his presence. His power wasn't only in what he said, it was in the spaces between what he said. That's the secret. Silence creates presence, and presence is influence. Now let's turn this back to you. Imagine you're in a heated discussion. Someone throws accusations, waiting for you to defend yourself. Most people would instantly react, shouting back, justifying, explaining. But what happens if you pause instead? What happens if you let their words hang in the air while you stay calm and silent? I'll tell you what happens. They begin to doubt themselves. They begin to feel the weight of their own words. They start revealing more than they planned, trying to fill the silence you've deliberately created. And you stay in control. This is what the Stoics meant when they taught that power is not about reacting. It's about choosing when and how to respond. Pausing is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Because in the pause, you see the situation clearly. In the pause, you keep control of yourself. In the pause, you force others to show their hand. Let me share something from personal experience. I once worked with someone who always dominated meetings. He talked fast, filled every silence, and made it seem like he had all the answers. But I noticed something. Whenever I stayed quiet after he finished, just looking at him, letting the silence stretch, he would keep talking. And the more he talked, the more he exposed holes in his own argument. By the time he was done, he had revealed more than I ever needed to say. All I had to do was pause. That's the power of silence. You don't always need to out-talk people. Sometimes, the strongest move is to say nothing and let them undo themselves. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But won't people see my silence as weakness? Won't they think I don't know what to say? That's the fear most of us carry. But here's the Stoic answer. Weakness is not silence. Weakness is being a slave to impulse. Strength is being deliberate. And there is nothing more deliberate than choosing to hold back when everyone else is rushing forward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. What does this mean? It means you don't need to have a reaction to everything. You don't need to speak every thought. You don't need to meet every noise with more noise. Silence itself can be an answer. Think about great musicians. What makes their music powerful is not just the notes they play, but the pauses in between. Those pauses create rhythm. They create anticipation. They give meaning to the sound. Without pauses, music would just be noise. And without pauses in our speech, our presence, our lives, we too become noise. So, here's the challenge. Learn to master the pause. The next time someone provokes you, instead of snapping back, count 3 seconds in your head. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to fill every quiet moment. The next time you speak in front of a group, let your words breathe. Don't be afraid of silence. Use it. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to jump in, but stay with it, because soon you'll notice something extraordinary. People will start leaning toward you. They'll start respecting your presence. They'll start listening, not just to your words, but to your pauses. And that is where true authority lives. The world is full of noise. People shouting their opinions, people trying to dominate by talking faster, louder, longer. But noise doesn't equal power. Noise is often the mask of insecurity. True power belongs to the one who can pause, to the one who can stay silent while others stumble over their words, to the one whose presence is felt even in stillness. So remember this Stoic lesson. Silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. Pausing before responding is not hesitation, it is deliberate power. And the person who masters the pause masters the room. Because in silence, you not only reveal others, you reveal yourself as someone who cannot be rushed, cannot be provoked, and cannot be shaken. That is the kind of power no one can take from you. Part 4. See patterns. Move with wisdom. One of the greatest gifts the Stoics left us is the reminder that life is not as random as it seems. At first glance, people look unpredictable. Circumstances feel chaotic, and events appear to happen without reason. But if you step back, detach from your emotions, and truly observe, you'll notice something remarkable. Life moves in patterns. People repeat themselves. Human behavior, no matter how complicated, follows rhythms you can learn to recognize. Think about it. Deadlines are always followed by stress. Conversations about money often turn into boasting or insecurity. In conflicts, people rarely face the truth directly. They deflect, they shift blame, they dodge accountability. And yet, how many times do we act surprised, as though we've never seen it before? The Stoics would shake their heads and remind us, "Why are you shocked? Did you expect human nature to be anything different?" Marcus Aurelius often wrote about this in his meditations. He reminded himself every morning that he would encounter people who are arrogant, ungrateful, envious, or selfish, not because he was cynical, but because he was realistic. He knew that if he expected people to behave perfectly, he would live in constant disappointment. But if he expected patterns, he could meet them with calm, not surprise. And that is exactly what wisdom looks like. Learning to see patterns, so you can move with clarity instead of stumbling blindly. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're working with a colleague who always procrastinates until the last moment. You've seen it again and again. Every deadline brings the same chaos. Now, if you fail to notice the pattern, you'll keep getting frustrated, keep getting angry, keep letting their behavior throw you off balance. But if you see the pattern clearly, you can adjust. You stop expecting them to change overnight. You plan ahead. You prepare yourself. And suddenly, their last-minute panic no longer controls you. Or picture another example. You're in a debate with someone, and instead of answering your point directly, they always dodge the question, always turn the focus back on you, always deflect. If you don't notice this, you'll fall into the trap, getting defensive, wasting energy. But the moment you see the pattern, you stop engaging on their terms. You don't waste your breath. You keep your calm. Their tactic loses its grip on you. This is the power of recognizing patterns. You prevent yourself from being surprised. You protect yourself from anger. And you free yourself from manipulation. But here's the danger. Many people sleepwalk through life, blind to the repetition all around them. They repeat the same mistakes in relationships because they don't notice the pattern. They keep falling for the same manipulation because they don't recognize the game. They stay shocked by human flaws, even though those flaws appear everywhere, every day. The Stoics would call this blindness a form of slavery to illusion. Because if you can't see patterns, you'll always be reacting, always on the defensive, always asking, "Why me?" instead of asking, "What is this teaching me?" So, how do we train ourselves in this Stoic practice? How do we become students of patterns? First, we must learn to observe without judgment. Don't rush to label every behavior as good or bad. Just notice it. Track it. Like a scientist gathering data, step back and say, "I've seen this before. This is how this person usually reacts." This is the rhythm of this situation. Judgment clouds clarity, observation reveals it. Second, keep a mental or even physical record. The Stoics were great writers not just because they loved philosophy, but because they understood that writing sharpens memory. Journaling was their way of noticing patterns in themselves and in others. Seneca often wrote about his day, asking, "Where did I lose my temper? Where did I act with strength? Where did I repeat an old mistake?" By recording, he saw the cycles more clearly, and by seeing them, he could begin to break them. Third, anticipate outcomes. If you've seen a pattern 5 times, don't pretend the 6th time will be different. Instead, prepare, adjust. Expect the stress before the deadline. Expect the deflection in the conflict. Expect the boasting in the conversation about money. This doesn't mean you become cynical. It means you become wise. You stop being surprised, and in that lack of surprise, you find peace. But let me give you a warning here, because this is important. Once you learn to recognize patterns, once you start seeing the rhythm of people's behavior, you will be tempted to use it for manipulation. You'll realize how easy it is to predict someone's reactions and steer them in the direction you want. And yes, that kind of influence is real, but without ethics, it becomes poison. The Stoic does not study patterns to exploit others. The Stoic studies patterns to live with greater patience, honesty, and wisdom, to understand human nature, not to control it. To navigate relationships more peacefully, not to twist them for selfish gain. Because here's the truth. Manipulation may give you short-term victories, but it destroys trust in the long run. And without trust, no relationship, whether personal, professional, or social, can stand. The Stoic path is not about bending people to your will. It's about seeing reality clearly, so you can make better choices for yourself and move through life with steady calm. So ask yourself, where in your life are you ignoring patterns? Do you keep attracting the same type of partner, yet wonder why the relationships keep failing? Do you keep facing the same conflicts at work, yet act as though each one is brand new? Do you keep falling for the same manipulations, even though the signs were there all along? If so, the lesson is clear. It's time to open your eyes. It's time to stop being shocked by the predictable. It's time to stop stumbling in circles and start walking with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Consider, when you are offended, that you are not harmed. The pattern of life is that people will behave this way. The harm comes not from them, but from your failure to expect it." That is the essence of Stoic wisdom. When you see patterns, you stop being ruled by them. You are no longer the blind participant. You become the clear observer. And from that vantage point, you can choose your steps with calm and purpose. So remember this: life repeats itself. People repeat themselves. Circumstances repeat themselves. You can either be surprised every time, or you can be prepared every time. The choice is yours. And when you choose to see patterns and move with wisdom, you unlock one of the greatest powers the Stoics promised: the ability to walk through chaos with unshakable peace. So now we come to the end of this journey, and I want you to pause and think carefully about what we've uncovered together. Outsmarting others. It's not about manipulation. It's not about trickery, and it's definitely not about shouting the loudest, forcing your will, or playing some endless game of domination. No, outsmarting others in the Stoic sense is something far more profound. It's about clarity. It's about calm. It's about control. Not of the world outside, not of other people, but of yourself. Let's revisit the 4 Stoic practices that bring this power to life. First, we learn to detach from emotion, to create space between stimulus and response. Most people are slaves to their impulses, tossed around by anger, fear, and pride. But when you detach, you see reality as it is, not as your emotions distort it. That's when you stop being controlled and start controlling yourself. Second, we discovered the practice of observing yourself like a stranger. Most people live in self-deception, convinced they are kinder, smarter, more disciplined than they truly are. But when you see yourself with brutal honesty, when you face your blind spots without flinching, you build credibility, trust, and mastery over your own life. Third, we explored the art of silence, the power of the pause. The world is filled with noise, with people scrambling to fill every gap with words. But the Stoic knows that silence unsettles others, reveals truth, and builds presence. By pausing, you reclaim control, forcing others to reveal themselves while you remain steady, deliberate, and unshakable. And fourth, we learn to see patterns and move with wisdom. Human behavior is not chaos, it's rhythm. The same insecurities, the same fears, the same tactics repeat themselves again and again. When you see those patterns, you are no longer surprised, no longer manipulated, no longer trapped in cycles. You walk through life prepared, patient, and free. These 4 practices, detachment, self-observation, silence, and pattern recognition, are not just strategies. They are a way of life. Together, they transform you into someone who can outsmart others, not by overpowering them, but by out-centering them, not by manipulation, but by mastery. And that brings us to the final truth. Real power is quiet. Real power is intentional. Real power is unshakable. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't need to prove yourself in every conflict. You don't need to react to every insult or fall into every trap of manipulation. The greatest power is found in mastering yourself. Because once you master yourself, no one can control you. Think about it. The person who cannot be provoked, cannot be deceived, and cannot be swayed by the chaos of others. That is the person who holds true influence. That is the person others respect, even if they don't understand why. And here's the beauty of it. This isn't reserved for philosophers in ancient Rome or presidents in history books. This is for you, for your relationships, for your career, for your daily battles with stress, conflict, and uncertainty. Stoic wisdom is timeless because human nature hasn't changed, and neither have the tools we need to master it. So let me leave you with this challenge. The next time life tests you, the next time someone tries to provoke you, the next time chaos swirls around you, don't ask, how do I control them? Ask instead, how do I master myself? Because when you do that, you've already won. And if this message resonated with you, if you feel a spark of clarity, a reminder of your own inner strength, then I invite you to take this Stoic journey even further. Reflect on these 4 practices in your own life. Leave a comment below sharing which one speaks to you the most. Was it detaching from emotions? Observing yourself like a stranger? Mastering silence? Or seeing patterns? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you found value here, give this video a like. It helps spread these ideas to more people who need them. And subscribe, because we're building a community that isn't chasing noise or cheap tricks, but real wisdom, real strength, and real freedom. Remember, the world will always be full of chaos, but you don't have to be. Outsmarting others begins not with conquering them, but with conquering yourself. And when you do, you'll find that the greatest victory isn't in defeating others. It's in becoming someone who cannot be defeated. If today's message spoke to you, don't just let it pass by. Pause and reflect. Which of the 4 Stoic practices do you feel called to apply first? Detaching from emotions, observing yourself, mastering silence, or seeing patterns? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you found value here, give this video a like so more people can discover these timeless lessons. Make sure to subscribe and join our growing Stoic community, where we're not chasing noise or empty victories, but building real strength, clarity, and inner freedom together. Because the greatest journey you can take is the one inward, and it begins with a single step, right here, right now.